So, I would like to make all of you this question. Do you feel represented by a superhero? Can it be any fictional character? No, this is the question. Do you feel represented by a superhero? Nowadays, superheroes are more popular than they have ever been, and that's in large part due to the movies. Not everybody is a fan, and that's okay. However, would you believe me if I said that these productions have an important role in our society? That they are more than just fun entertainment? Today, I want to show you how superhero films empower minorities. So, the reason why I made you all the question at the beginning was to provoke self-reflection. If you understand the impact of being represented by a character, a TV show, a film, then you will understand my point. For those who don't, and especially for those who think representation in pop culture is meaningless, I hope you will hear me out. My name is Paulo de Tarso. Do keep in mind that I'm not part of any minority, and I definitely don't speak for anyone but myself. Yet, I know what it's like to relate with these characters. I grew up in this culture. So, quick history. As I grew up and tried to find a self-identity, I saw myself as an extremely shy and weak nerd. Yes, not a very positive depiction, but that is also a pretty accurate description of Peter Parker. Watching the first Spider-Man film always makes me emotional, because there's a scene in which Peter cries as his uncle dies in front of him. Those tears, I'm sorry I don't have rights to the picture, obviously, but you can visualize it, right? It's here. Those tears will always be memorable for me, because I didn't say before, but I used to cry a lot. As a kid, I tried to hold back my feelings because I didn't want to show vulnerability. Due to stereotypes, I thought men weren't supposed to cry, to show sensitivity. But if a superhero could do it, why couldn't I? And unlike what some people have told me, his powers don't change who he is. In Spider-Man 2, he doesn't even need powers to save people. What's even more amazing is that I'm far from the only person who shares these feelings with the character. Through him, I was able to feel a sense of unity with others, especially my brother. That's it. So, if Spider-Man was able to have a huge impact on my life, imagine what it could mean to the underrepresented. While any character can connect with us due to his/her personality, their look also has a huge role. Unfortunately, the majority of these heroes are white, male, and heterosexual, leaving a small space for others. The reason for this is that both the Marvel and DC comics, which are the most recognizable superhero brands, were created in a time where diversity wasn't encouraged. That doesn't mean there weren't progressive messages though. It all started in the comic books. Wonder Woman, one of the first female superheroes, was created in 1941 by psychologist William Moulton Marston. The first stories involving this powerful woman carried many feminist ideals. For example, if a man managed to chain her bracelets together, she would lose her powers, which resembles how real women often lose their voices in a sexist society. Also, in light of the civil rights movement, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the XMen in 1963. Obviously, that's not a picture from the comics, I couldn't find it, but these awesome cosplayers will do. On the surface, they were a group composed of 5 white teenagers. But because they were mutants, a human fictional species born with powers, prejudice, and ignorance were their enemies. In the comics, society hated the X-Men simply for being mutants, regardless of their heroic actions. Both the X-Men and Wonder Woman have evolved to become symbols, which would lead to their adaptation in the cinemas. And these are just 2 examples out of many. So, the transition to the big screen is very meaningful because Hollywood movies are able to reach a lot more audiences than the comic books. But how did the superhero genre contribute to diversity in this industry? Well, there are TV shows, of course, a lot of them to talk about, but that would be too much. So thinking about just films, you may have a few examples, but none of these, I guess, are more than 10 years old. And why is that? Well, there are many reasons, you see. For example, recent social movements and campaigns pressing film studios for more diversity. Also, it took some time for Hollywood to fully invest in the superhero genre. In this graphic I made, which is about the quantity of theatrically released Marvel and DC Comics films, you can see that there has been a growth since 1978. Why is 1978 the first year? Well, this was the year Superman the movie arrives in theaters, which is considered to be the first high-budgeted American superhero comics-based production. Yeah, not very specific, of course. Well, regardless of that, regardless of all these situations, there have been superhero films started by women and people of color in the past. For example, Supergirl was the first DC film to star a woman. Obviously, that's not a picture from the film. Again, couldn't find it. Damn Google. Well, this superhero film, which was made in 1984, was a spin-off from the aforementioned Superman the movie. Unfortunately, the film was deemed a failure both by critics and at the box office. Still, it was an important step into the right direction, simply for being the first time moviegoers got to see a woman as a superhero. Next up, Steel and Spawn. Well, that's not the actual Steel character. This is the guy who plays him. You might know him as Shaquille O'Neal. Well, they aren't very famous characters, but they were the first comics-based black superheroes to have films. Again, these films failed commercially. But don't worry, I'm not gonna keep repeating myself, because here comes 1998 Blade. This one, not only was it a hit, not only it became a trilogy, but it's arguably the first good Marvel film. What came after its success? X-Men, Spider-Man, even DC films like Batman Begins, and eventually Wonder Woman, Black Panther, Aquaman, Captain Marvel, and Into the Spider-Verse. Now, this should not be deemed the most important motivation, but it's certainly a big reason why Hollywood studios have been investing on diversity. From the highest grossing superhero films, 3 of them are Captain Marvel, Black Panther, and Aquaman. And these films obviously are not starred by white men, but still they are among the very best, the ones who made most money, with the exception of the Avengers movies, because those have almost every one of these together. Well, alongside that, we must take into consideration that obviously it goes without saying that a film like Wonder Woman shouldn't have taken so long to be made. 2017, the character was created in 1941, for Christ's sake. But the impact this film generated was amazing. And unlike Catwoman, Supergirl, Elektra, and other female superhero stories, this film was praised by critics, received many prestigious awards, and broke box office records. Black Panther, suffice to say, was a social phenomenon. It received 3 Oscar awards. It is the most expensive movie with its cast majority as black. And when it released in theaters, the movie had entire exhibitions purchased for underprivileged kids. The Black Panther Challenge was the name of these viral donations, an initiative from philanthropist Frederick Joseph. Still, we must take also in consideration the storytellers of these films. In this case, we have Patty Jenkins, the director of Wonder Woman, and Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther. Obviously, superhero movies aren't cheap. The budget could go from $90 million to $200 million. It is very hard to trust anyone to direct, to write these films. But fortunately, producers made the right choice by choosing people who reflect their heroes. The opportunity for underrepresented people to tell the narratives that they want to tell in a huge platform like this, a superhero blockbuster that the entire world will see and express their creativity to so many, is very rare. Also, it is important that they get to tell stories from characters who don't necessarily look like them. That is a major step for equality in this industry. For example, Taika Waititi, a Polynesian filmmaker who directed Thor Ragnarok in 2017. But let's think about Aquaman for a second. Yeah, I know, not everybody takes this character seriously. But when I hear this name Aquaman, I think blonde, white, male. This is the character I grew up with. This is the comic books, this is the cartoons I grew up with. And now, he's played on the big screen by Jason Momoa, who is also Polynesian. When kids get to see him on the screen, they will remember of his face when they hear the name, unlike me. And while there are always discussions about whether some changes in adaptation are for the better, I certainly believe this one is. Why? Because now the character will create a much needed socially relevant legacy. And speaking about legacy, there also have been made changes in the comic books, the source material. In the last few years, Falcon, Captain America's best friend, sorry Bucky, he took up the shield from Captain America when he retired. That is also the ending of Avengers Endgame. Sorry for the spoilers. And also, Captain Marvel used to be Miss Marvel in the comics for a long time, who was not such a popular character as she is now. But the reconstruction of her character and the new superhero identity were the inspirations that led to her movie. But these characters were created in the 60s, at the ending of the 60s. Reshaping these old characters is not the only way for diversity. You may know some relatively new characters, like for example Miles Morales. He is the protagonist of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. He is a young, Hispanic, African-American kid from Brooklyn. And unlike Black Panther, who took ages to have a film, he was created in the 60s too, this Spider-Man already has one, and he was created at the beginning of the decade only. Then we have an even more recent creation, Kamala Khan, the new Miss Marvel. She took the comic world by storm with her personality and representation of Muslim culture. Hopefully, she will be getting a TV show which has been announced. But obviously, representation should be a constant evolution. Now that I'm thinking about everything I've just told you, I can see that there is kind of a cycle, however, in the history of superhero fiction. Let's think about it. The comics create, then the TV and the movies adapt, then the comics become more popular, they adapt, they create new characters and they reshape old ones, then they are adapted again. I suppose you might be wondering, what does the future hold for socially relevant superhero films? Well, I am particularly excited for a Brazilian superhero, and there will actually be one in the New Mutants movie, whenever it releases. Shang-Chi will be the first Asian superhero to have a movie. Promises have also been made that we'll be getting LGBTQ+ characters soon. You can search, if you are interested, on the internet for all the upcoming superhero productions. There is a lot more to see. Well, I truly hope this trend won't stop anytime soon. I hope everybody feels like they can be superheroes too. Thank you all for coming.